Good evening, everyone. I warmly welcome you to our CellTalk webinar. In today's session, Mr. Abhijit Chavan will be presenting the paper titled Caste Differences in Hypertension Among Women in India, Diminishing Health Returns to Socioeconomic Status for Lower Caste Groups. Abhijit is working as a junior economist at Renix. His tasks include collecting data on socioeconomic variables, data related to politics, GDP, and healthcare related data of the state, while also reviewing the literature to analyze this data for writing research papers for journal publications. Abhijit is pursuing his BS in Economic Sciences from the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Bhopal. Before joining Renix, he worked as a political research analyst at ETG Research in Hyderabad. At Renix, he has been able to understand the process of writing research papers, and he aims to pursue research in macroeconomics and political economics. So, without further ado, I now welcome Abhijit to take the floor.
Yeah, Thank you for the introduction. So, the title for today's presentation is Caste Differences in Hypertension Among Women in India, Diminishing Health Returns to Socioeconomic Status for Lower Caste Groups. So, the original authors are Jalaluddin Sanjeev Acharya et al. The topic selected is from the socioeconomics. Journal title is Journal of Racial and Ethnic Health Disparities. The impact factor of the research paper is 3.524 and the year of publication is 2020. The research has an impact on prevalence of hypertension, caste, and women's health. So, to start, the World Health Organization in 2014 stated that non-communicable diseases have surpassed infectious diseases as the leading cause of death in the global burden of disease. Hypertension is a serious risk factor for many non-communicable diseases and has become a major global public health concern. Hypertension is not only a common risk factor for cardiovascular diseases, like atherosclerosis, heart disease, heart failure, stroke, and angina, but also peripheral vascular disease, retinopathy, neuropathy, dementia, and cognitive decline. As life expectancy continues to increase in lower income countries, the prevalence of non-communicable and chronic conditions such as hypertension has been on the rise. The increase in the prevalence of hypertension is now growing in the low income countries than in the industrially developed uh, countries. In India, the national prevalence rate of hypertension is 25%, and it has become the fourth leading risk factor for mortality and disability. Recent population-based studies have shown that the prevalence of hypertension is relatively higher in middle and older age groups across geographic location, education, and household wealth status. In younger age group, the hypertension prevalence rates are even higher for India than for the Central and Eastern Europe, a region where the prevalence of hypertension was previously deemed the highest in the world. Yeah. The caste system in India, which is based on religious and ideological ground, has historically existed as both a system of exclusion and a status hierarchy that profoundly determines one access to resources and life opportunities. As we can see in the image that based on the notion of purity and pollution, the caste hierarchy places the pure Brahmins, the dominant caste group, consisting of priests, teachers, doctors, and other white-collar professionals on the top, the Kshatriyas, which are rulers and warriors, and Vaishyas, which were meant to be businessmen, in the middle, and the impure ex-untouchable Dalits, manual workers, and servants, like forming the bulk of the scheduled caste at the bottom. As the caste hierarchy is hereditary, change in economic situation would rarely allow a lower caste group to ascend to a higher ritual status. A growing body of studies suggests that lower caste and indigenous people experience disproportionate rates of morbidity, mortality, and early onset of death in India. Much of the caste differences in health outcomes are often attributed to the unequal distribution of socioeconomic resources. However, there has been little research on the extent to which indicators of socioeconomic status, like which is known as SES, such as wealth and education, may condition the caste differences in chronic condition in India. Socioeconomic status, including education, wealth, occupation, prestige, and geographical or residential context, can give access to an array of beneficial resources that in myriad ways help achieve our health goal. In essence, this implies that individuals with greater access to flexible resources such as knowledge, power, prestige, freedom, and beneficial social connections are better able and prepared to employ these resources as critical means to avoid or control risk factors of disease and mortality. Recent research, particularly in the context of the USA, demonstrate the hypothesis of diminishing return, which posits that socioeconomic status does not confer similar benefits. Sorry. Yeah. So, which posits that socioeconomic status does not confer similar benefits across racial ethnic groups, and especially marginalized racial ethnic groups, which tend to have diminishing return to higher socioeconomic status. One critical argument for this hypothesis is that evidence that even marginalized ethnic groups with a higher socioeconomic status encounter institutional and everyday discrimination, racism, and race-related inequalities in various domains of life, which adversely impact their health. Yeah. So prior studies are important in understanding the caste and socioeconomic status disparities in health. Less is clear whether how social position indicators such as caste, gender, income, and education may intersect to shape health. Uh, In particular, prior studies rarely look at how SES indicators can intersect with caste group and thus create unique position of disadvantages and inequalities in India. This study addresses this critical gap in the literature by examining caste differences in hypertension and the extent to which differences are conditioned by the key socioeconomic indicators such as wealth and education. The survey has used the de-identified data from National Family Health Survey (NFHS) from 2015 to 2016 India. The NFHS is a nationally representative population-based household survey. The NHS follows a two-stage probability sampling strategy. The first stage of the sampling strategy includes the selection of villages as the primary sampling unit, which is also known as PSU, in rural areas and a census enumeration block CEB in urban areas. In the second, they use the systematic random sampling. Yeah. From the first stage, 22 households were selected from each PSU and CEB, resulting in total of 6,28,900 households, out of which 6,01,509 households were selected for interviews. In the selected household, 7,23,875 women aged between 15 and 49 were found to be eligible for an interview using the women's questionnaire. Of the total eligible women respondents, 6,99,686 women took part in interviews with a response rate of 97%. After deleting cases with missing information on any of the variables included in the analysis, the analytic sample consisted of 6,48,000 and 64 women between 15 to 49 years. The survey used standardized protocols and field-friendly technologies to examine blood pressure, BP. They used the Omron blood pressure monitor, and BP was measured times at 5 minutes interval. They averaged the second and third measurement to determine the systolic and diastolic BP. Finally, hypertension was determined as having an average systolic blood pressure of greater than 140 millimeter of mercury and blood pressure of greater than 90 millimeter of mercury, and or self-reported use of any anti-hypertensive medication. The recent clinical practice guidelines consider this definition as a stage 2 and more severe hypertension. Social caste was based on the respondent's self-report of whether they belong to one of the following categories, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, other backward caste, and other castes. Scheduled caste and scheduled tribe represent the most socially and economically disadvantaged group. As these two castes have historically been socio-economically disadvantaged, they receive some state-sponsored affirmative benefits. The other backward caste represented a group of historically disadvantaged castes similar in the social status to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Respondents who do not belong to any of the above caste groups are referred to as upper caste, representing the most advantageous caste in the traditional Hindu caste hierarchy. As the caste system is not applicable to Muslims, Christians, and Buddhists, They group them into a category referred to as non-caste. Socioeconomic status SES indicators include education wealth index. Education is based on self-reported completed years of education ranging from 0 to 20 years. The wealth index is a composite measure of households' ownership of a wide range of assets, such as agricultural land, farm animals, radio, television, bicycle, computer, mobile phone, etc. Other such as housing types, which include material for the housing construction, then furniture, that is example, bed, sofa, table, chair, etc. And other dwelling resources such as access to water, type of sanitation facility, electricity and refrigerator, etc. The underlying assumption of the wealth index is that there is a continuum of economic status. A household's cumulative health represents its relative economic position in such a continuum of economic status of a country. Broadly, households are given score based on their ownership of the type and amount of assets. These scores are derived using the principal component analysis, and each household is then assigned a continuous asset score. The analysis controlled for several socio-demographic factors, uh, health behaviors, and health condition. Socio-demographic variables include the current age of woman, measured in years, marital status, and the place of residence. Health behavior and conditions include current smoking status, body mass index, and a random blood group glucose. Yeah. The analysis included 6,48,064 Indians aged between 15 and 49 years. They used logistic regression analysis to regress a binary outcome of a hypertension on the caste categories, controlling for the covariates listed above. The analysis followed a two-stage analytic approach. First, they ran two logistic models that examined the effects of caste categories with and without adjustment of socioeconomic measures, that is, wealth score and education. Second, they modeled two-stage interaction between caste and two measures of SCS, that is, education and wealth in full sample controlling for the other covariates listed above. Yeah, these are the table. The table presents the distribution of sample characteristics by the five caste group. The prevalence of hypertension was highest in the non-caste, which is 13.34%, followed by upper caste, which has 12.7%, and the scheduled tribe, which has 11.33%. Other backward class, which had 10.47%, and scheduled caste 10.45%, categories had a similarly low levels of hypertension prevalence. In terms of well score, the most privileged caste, the caste has the highest average well score, which is of 0.66, with a standard deviation of 0.94. And the scheduled tribes had the lowest average well score, which is minus 0.66, with a standard deviation of 0.82. The average years of education were highest among upper caste members, which is 9.15 years, and the lowest among scheduled tribes, which is 4.64 years. The average year of age were about 30 years for all the caste groups. The average level of glucose in each caste group was also within the normal range of 70 to 130 mg per dl, which was also highest among upper caste and the lowest among scheduled tribes. The majority of samples in each caste group were non-smokers and from rural areas, like more than 62% in each caste group. And also they were married, over 66% in each caste group. This table represents the odds ratio of hypertension obtained from the logistic regression model. Model 1 accounts for the other covariates such as age, marital status, smoking, glucose, body mass index, and type of residence. Examining Model 1, the researchers find that compared with the upper caste, both scheduled tribes and scheduled movements had higher odds of hypertension. However, other backward class women had lower odds of hypertension. Model 2 includes the wealth scores and education. After adjustment for wealth and education, the researchers find that association of caste group hypertension remains robust, although odd ratios were slightly attenuated. Examining the socioeconomic status indicators in the model 2, when that increasing education was associated with decreased odds of hypertension. So model 3 includes an interaction term between caste and wealth score, and model 4 includes an interaction term between caste and years of education, and both interaction terms were significant. For ease of interpretation, they obtained predicted probabilities of hypertension by caste and wealth decides like the categories of wealth from the model 3 and model 4. Yeah. This is the same that I've explained now. Yeah. So as presented in the figure 1, we see that the caste differences in the predicted probabilities of hypertension are wider at lowest level of wealth, while caste differences seem to be smaller at highest levels of wealth. Additionally, higher level of wealth seem to be more protective for the non-caste group than the upper caste, as the non-caste group was statistically significantly different from the reference group upper. Other backward class were also statistically significantly different from the reference group, and it suggests that wealth effect is not protective for other backward classes as it is for the upper caste. As shown in the figure 2, which is while probabilities of hypertension tends to decline with increasing level of education, the decline seems to be steepest for the non-caste and upper caste member. It refers that higher education does not bring as improvement in health to other backward class and it does as it does for the upper caste. Yeah. This study examines the caste differences in hypertension in India using nationally representative data set. Analysis revealed population level caste differences in the prevalence of hypertension and the extent to which which two important socioeconomic indicators, education and wealth, condition the caste differences in hypertension among reproductive age women. They find that scheduled tribes and non-caste groups have a higher likelihood of hypertension compared with the upper caste groups. This finding also concur with the recent studies that have shown that the disadvantaged caste groups such as scheduled tribes have higher levels of hypertension compared with the upper caste member. This can possibly explained by the fact that women of scheduled tribes constitute one of the most visible underprivileged groups in India. Tribal people have historically been exposed to greater inequality and discrimination in terms of access to resources that can improve their social status. Given the historical exclusion from social and economic opportunities, tribal women tend to have lower of educational attainment, labor market opportunities, and social mobility. Because of these structural factors, tribal women may have greater exposure to psychological stressors associated with their socioeconomically disadvantaged position. Apart from additive regression models also indicate that non-caste members have higher likelihood of hypertension than upper caste members. It is worth noting that the caste system does not apply to non-Hindu population and religious minority groups in India. It is not surprising to find that although non-caste members have affiliation with the caste system, they report higher levels of hypertension in India. Minorities often experience covert and overt forms of discrimination, stigma, and socio-political marginalization in the India. Discrimination and feelings of marginalization and insecurity are well-known risk factors for hypertension. The indicators of socioeconomic status were inversely associated with the hypertension. However, the analysis found substantial heterogeneity in the association of socioeconomic status indicators with hypertension. They observed two distinct findings. First, the socioeconomic patterning of hypertension was not invariant by caste group. Second, caste difference in risk of hypertension was larger at the lower levels of socioeconomic status, with a clearer pattern apparent in the wealth index, and caste differences become smaller at the higher levels of socioeconomic status. The researchers acknowledge several limitations in this study. First, the Indian Family Health Survey primarily focused on maternal and reproductive and child, and thus survey subjects were restricted to 15 to 49 years of 15 to 49 years old. Although hypertension prevalence is increasingly becoming more common among young adults, the development of hypertension picks up at a later age. The association of caste group with hypertension and the heterogeneity in the effects of socioeconomic factors could have been more robust if they had relatively older age cohort in the sample. Second, the current study focused solely on the women, preventing them from making significant gender comparisons. This limits them from finding whether gender and caste intersects in the predicting hypertension. Third, this analysis uses a cross-sectional survey and therefore it offers a snapshot in the time for the variables in question. Their findings demonstrated that the protective effect of SES is not homogeneous across caste groups. The evidence of diminishing returns to socioeconomic status in the other backward caste women concurs with the study of differential social patterning by racial groups in the USA. This finding point to the fact that there is a clear socioeconomic patterning in hypertension and that substantial variation exists in the strength and protective direction of SS indicated by the caste group. Understanding this variation by caste group in general and what it is about caste membership that affect hypertension in particular will help clarify the caste disparities in health. Future research must consider the silency of caste membership as an ascribed status that limits social mobility and affects different outcomes across the life course. Uh, Findings provides evidence of differential returns to socioeconomic status and have implication for understanding the causes of SCS patterning in health among disadvantaged caste groups in India. Given the higher prevalence of hypertension among the young people in India and the risk factor that aging has on hypertension, this issue will likely be exacerbated in the coming decades as India's young population ages. Thank you, and you can find me at abhijit@redx.org.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. That was a wonderful talk. I will now open the floor to the audience for any questions, comments, or concerns that they might have. So I can see a few questions in the chat box. I'll just read them out.
Yeah.
Vijay has a question. He asks, what is the magnitude of difference in the levels of hypertension across different caste groups?
So this was the result they have obtained from it, and when they use the caste with the wealth factors, they have used the um, that yeah, the upper caste as the reference caste category for it, and according to that they have find the results here we see that the caste is related with wealth. We can find that the scheduled caste is has a higher hypertension than the upper caste, and same is with the non people that they have a low hypertension as compared to the upper caste people. So they haven't got exactly the what is the magnitude, as they have used the logistic regression model, which tells us about the probability of hypertension.
I hope that answers your question, Vijay. Nupur has a question. She asks, why do non-caste and upper caste people have similar drop in hypertension with respect to education? These two communities are quite different.
Can we repeat it once again?
Why do non-caste and upper caste people have a similar drop in hypertension with respect to education? These two communities are quite different.
Yeah, like I haven't gone through this, why they have a similar drop. Uh, yeah, I can't say much about it right now.
Okay. Yogita also has a question. She asks, are there any confounding factors that can have any impact on results obtained in such type of studies?
I guess
Are there any confounding factors that can have an impact on results obtained in such type of studies?
no. I guess no. They can't have.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Yogita. Yogita has one more question. She asks, have they performed any analysis according to age groups?
No, they haven't performed any analysis. The result, the data set was limited to 15 to 49 years of age only. So it was a mixture of all the age groups.
I hope that answers your question, Yogita. Numair has one more question. Uh, he asks, how can this study help policymakers in improving the health of the marginalized populations?
The study, recently, there are many affirmative actions which are carried forward by governments for this marginalized group, but they haven't any significant amount of change in their lifestyle. So there needs some policy which can help them fight this. After attaining some socioeconomic status, this discrimination should be lower. So government can help in framing some policies which like some educational policies which affect which will reduce the discrimination among this marginalized group.
I hope that answers your question, Numer. Uh, I see no other questions in the chat box. So I heard, thank you, Abhijit, for this wonderful webinar again. And I would now like to inform the audience of the next Cell Talk that will be held on the 10th of January 2023. And Ms. Aditi Ratnam will be presenting the paper Prioritizing the Mental Health and Well-being of Healthcare Workers, an Urgent Global Public Health Priority. Thank you so much, everyone, for your presence today, and good night.
Thank you.